I moved into my unit in November of 2003, so I was amongst one of the first people to live here. And I joined because, one, I knew someone who was also a member at the time and who knew that I was looking to find a little bit more community where I lived. I actually grew up living in limited equity co-ops in New York City, where there's something like 400,000 units throughout the state. My father was a printer for the New York Daily News, and I lived in a co-op that originally was for printers and their families, and later members of other unions were allowed to come in. I loved how limited equity co-ops are really seen as apart from the commercial real estate market and as a way of providing affordable housing for workers. And I sort of wanted to get a little bit more of a taste of that. I was really lucky in that before I moved here, I was living in rent-stabilized housing, not very far away, so my rent wasn't that much higher than what I actually pay here. So on one hand, I was looking at costs, obviously, and wanting to maintain an ability to do activist work and a lot of volunteer work. I didn't want to kind of have to compromise my own integrity to afford rent, even though DC at the time was a lot cheaper than it is now. But really, for me, I was looking for a sense of community, and I wound up exploring becoming a yoga teacher, and I also started exploring doing all kinds of hands-on healing work, Reiki, polarity therapy, shamanistic practices, in part because I had had a lot of essentially trauma from my own youth, from growing up the daughter of immigrants and refugees, genocide survivors. And I, obviously working with Central Americans, working with other communities, I was seeing a lot of that. And I realized that community-based organizations often were really wonderful at being kind and providing services and doing amazing organizing within the community, but they weren't so great about doing the same thing with their staff. And so I was really wanting to figure out how we could make community-based organizations as much of a healing force internally as they were externally. And there's no way I would have been able to afford to have been able to do that had I not lived in the co-op. So over the years, as I became a teacher as well, a yoga teacher, and I discovered that I really liked doing both energy work and yoga teaching, surprise, surprise, in community settings and in places where people were really suffering, like, for example, hospitals, or in times when they were suffering, like right after getting a cancer diagnosis. So I also was able to go on and become a yoga therapist, which, normally that would be about $8,000. And the way that I was able to do that, in this entire time, really just piecing together work, a little bit here, a little bit there, from independent contracting with nonprofits, was actually thanks to living here at Ella Jo Baker. At the time, there was a special, oh my God, I'm even forgetting what it's called, first-time homeownership credits. And DC agreed to match those that HUD was providing at the national level. And lo and behold, I got back $8,000, which was exactly enough for me to do a 3.5-year program to be a yoga therapist. So I'm now one of 3,000 in the country, and I'm really happy I get to work with people who have cancer or chronic illnesses. I now work 1 day a week at an integrative medicine clinic and working with people of all ages and incomes and with all sorts of conditions. Last night I taught a workshop that was sold out, Yoga to Help You sleep because everyone in DC has sleep disturbances and anxiety. And I don't know what my path would have looked like had I been forced to pay, twice as much easily for housing here. It's also been really helpful. About 5 years ago, I reconnected with an old flame. And when I say old, I mean from when I was in my 20s, and I'm pushing 50 now. And he's from Peru, and he immigrated here, and we got married. I think the most important part for me has been developing community with an incredibly wide range of people in terms of ages, cultures, national origins, interests, skill sets. The people that have lived here have become my best friends. I was really privileged enough to be with one of our members as she was dying. We make food for each other when people are sick or just when we want to celebrate. We're able to support each other's children, families. We're able to take advantage of each other's skills. So, for example, even right now, Lee is a professional photographer and videographer, and she's the one who's shooting this video. How amazing is it that we have this level of kind of resources and knowledge within our community? We have writers, we have healers, we have people in the medical profession. I mean, just and educators, just an incredible community. So for me, that's been incredible. And then our shared projects have been wonderful. So we have a community garden, and to be able to have fresh grown organic food every spring, summer, and fall, and be able to plan that in community is wonderful. We've done advocacy campaigns together that have helped not only our co-op, but the 80 plus limited equity co-ops around the city. We've worked with neighborhood organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, which is just here on the corner at 14th and Clifton. Is so alienating. And to know that you have, people here who share values and who are always willing to pitch in and be there for each other, it's just such a benefit and blessing. So living in a limited equity co-op means that you have to engage in sweat equity. And every co-op is different. Here, because we are so small, in every single household, one person also serves on the board. So I've served on the board of directors of Ella Jo Baker since 2003, and I'm now the vice president. All of us are also required to be on one of our committees. We have a finance committee, we have a facilities committee, we have a membership and recruitment committee. We've done cooperative education together. We've had mediation in the past. We all are responsible for doing not just taking care of our individual units, but really taking care of all of our common properties. So that includes all of our front and backyards. We have a community garden to take care of. So when there's, like now we're in fall, there's leaves falling. We have to take care of our own leaves. When there's snow, we do hire someone if it's more than 4 inches of snow on the sidewalk. But other than that, we're out there with shovels. We have to maintain our storage spaces, and it's just a general maintenance of all of the property. Even our individual units are considered to be part of communal property, so it's really different than, let's say, the condominium model.
My name is Zain Al-Amin. I'm a member of the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative, and I've been a member for about 18 years now, I guess since 2003 and 2004. The Ella Jo Baker Community Cooperative has been involved in many activities in terms of activism in the city. One is that, of course, there's several members that were involved in affordable housing. They were longtime activists in gaining affordable housing and expanding it in Washington, D.C. There were people that were involved in activism around public schools and preserving traditional public education. There were people that were writing for progressive magazines including Left Turn magazine and Off Our Backs, which was a magazine. These were magazines for activists. There were, of course, many people involved in anti-war activism and involved in other community activism, whatever public spaces need to be saved. So we were involved in saving the Boys and Girls Club down the street, which is now called the Brita Bright Boys and Girls Club. It used to be called something like the Police Boys and Girls Club. Yes, there was a multinational company that wanted to basically take that property and turn it into luxury condos. And at the time, Parisa Nuruzi, who was a member of the co-op, asked me to be the liaison with the community activists, mainly women that were part of the cooperatives across the street that were trying to save that club for their children. At the time, the club was serving 250 kids of color, basically, and those kids would have been put out in the street if the Boys and Girls Club was to be closed. We launched a campaign. I worked with the women in terms of providing them with the expertise that the co-op had in terms of doing things like press releases, in terms of planning a campaign, and so on and so forth. And after a 6-month struggle, we basically won back the Boys and Girls Club, and on top of that, we went after the mayor to earmark $250,000 a year to preserve that club. There's co-op living is at its best when it's an oasis such as ours. We are basically an oasis of affordable housing in the fastest gentrifying neighborhood in the United States, as according to one of the major magazines that printed an article about that, about the 14th Street corridor, which is next to us. And what I enjoy most is, first of all, affordable housing, which allows its members like me, to actually work in the field that they love and not the field that they have to work in for money. So I was able to basically change careers, which wouldn't have happened if I was too busy paying a mortgage and having to take up jobs that I don't love but that pay well. Instead, I took up jobs that I love that don't pay as well, but pays enough for me to pay rent and get benefits. The other thing is obviously the exchange of ideas that we have among the activists, and how we share responsibilities and how we share information about the neighborhood and how we look after each other in a community that has basically is a holdout in the midst of this massive gentrification.
I am Helene Fisher, and I am a member of the Ella Jo Baker Intentional Community Cooperative. I moved into the cooperative in 2007, early in the year 2007. My son was 2 years old, and my daughter was, um, oh, 10 years old. Living in the co-op with my children has been a godsend, a blessing actually. Prior to moving into the co-op, we were in a very small apartment in Trinidad in Northeast DC, and it was wrought by a number of shootings and whatnot that made me feel very uncomfortable. So when I received a call that a space was available in the co-op, I was just ecstatic. So this is their home for the most part. My daughter in particular has blossomed living here at the cooperative. Her godmother lives across the street. Her godbrother lives across the street. So it's almost as if the cooperative has been an extended family for us. Many of the members in the cooperative are like sisters to me, and and I really appreciate it and value it. There's always somebody to talk to if you need to, but there's also um, some challenges, and those challenges can be enough to throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, I don't need to deal with all this. But then I remember, oh yeah, if I did not deal with all this, I would be dealing with other quote unquote financial stresses beyond the financial stresses that I already deal with. Um, the garden has been uh, here at the Ella Jo Baker Cooperative. We have a garden, and that's also been a blessing. Because at the grocery store, fresh vegetables can actually be pretty pricey. Eating healthy has a price on it. And so it's wonderful to be able to just go across the street and get some collard greens out of the garden when you want to make a pot of collard greens. Or if you need some tomatoes or some herbs or spices for, Italian pasta dish or spaghetti, it's good to have it right here, accessible and available. Although my son is just now leaving for college, my daughter Elizabeth left for college about 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and so leaving for college, oh boy, is a bittersweet experience. And she currently is working actually for a previous member of our cooperative, and that's a blessing as well. And she's also staying in one of her apartments at her home. She has graduated from undergrad from NYU, New York University, Shanghai campus. And that Shanghai campus is phenomenal. We've gotten a chance to go to China a couple of times. And once she graduated from there, she went and started a master's program at Peking University in Beijing, China. And she's completed that work. So now she has a master's in international relations. And I'm a proud mom. The affordability of Ella Jo Baker has been, like I said before, a godsend. We definitely would not be able to afford a 3-bedroom apartment in this particular neighborhood um, without either a roommate or without a significant bump in income, which isn't really too feasible right now. But the affordability is unimaginable. When I talk to other members or other prospective members about the affordability of this limited equity co-op, people are like, really? Is that all you, really? That's what you pay? But we do pay for utilities, electric and gas. But it, I wouldn't be as far along in my life right now if it were not so affordable. It makes a difference between a Christmas with nothing and a Christmas with something. My favorite thing about being a member of this cooperative is definitely the affordability of living here. And that's just the honest, God honest truth. Even though in my household itself, my little space within the cooperative is really warm and embracing and engaging. and helpful and loving, all those different things at home. But it is a challenge when you are placed with the responsibility of doing cooperative committee work or board meetings, all the things that are required as a member of our cooperative. So doing, in addition to doing everyday life work and going to work and managing your own household, you have to be mindful that being in a cooperative is work also. One of the things about living in an intentional community, within a community, and community building is the notion that you have to be mindful all the time. You have to be mindful in your interactions with each other while working on committees or at board meetings. And you have to be intentional and mindful of each other when walking past each other, or when you're leaving in and out of a door and you spill something in the foyer of your building, and realizing that other people are going to be walking through there too. So you want to be mindful that everything that you're doing is impacting 14 other households. And that can be a challenge. Personalities can be a challenge. You really have to realize that community is not just, or living in this cooperative community is not just about having an affordable place to live. It's about wanting to be humble, actually, and to give of yourself. You have to be a servant to not just yourself, but a servant with each other.